All right, welcome
Yes.
everyone. All right, so we have Hillary Black, our next author. So Hillary, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
All right, so can you tell me us a little bit about yourself and your journey as an author?
About 28 years ago, I started my business, Hillary Black Enterprises. It had a couple names throughout the years. And I am a spiritual transitional life and business coach. I started out as an intuitive. I've had the gift since I was 5 years old. I trained as an athlete from 5 years old, 6 years old to about 16, and I was competitive and I almost made it to the Olympics. I was two levels away. Swam with Tammy Bruce, who got fourth to Janet Evans in the '88 Olympics. And so I noticed as I was coming into readings, people would call me and say, "Is that reality still there? Is that reality still happening?" And so I realized that I had to bring the coaching piece in. And that's how I really kind of started coaching, so to speak, because I believe that we can co-create with the universe and reality. And so I would give them homework. And back in the day, they didn't have any spiritual coaches as they do now. That was unheard of in '96 when I started. And so I was fortunate enough to meet some wonderful teachers along the way. I did get training at Coach U and some other coaching training as well. And then I came in and had a client of mine who, well, actually, she was a really good friend of mine for 27 years. She was my spiritual teacher's daughter, and she's like, we got to tell people about this coaching you're doing because it was really transformational in her life. And I came in upon and met you. I have had someone tell me quite a few years ago that I was going to write a book, and I kind of blew it off. And I know that this is just a chapter in your book. And with your encouragement, I'm sure that I can I'll probably write a book down the road. But I had always said, um, my story is my story. Is it going to really matter? Does it make a difference? We all have stories, but what's powerful is connection. And I think that's what a lot of us are looking for is being understood, being heard, being seen, being valued, and just really having that connection and really coming into our purpose. And that's something that is really I'm passionate about and wanting to help people with.
I love that. So yeah, and really writing brings people together, but it also brings you back to you. It brings you back to your truth in some
Yes.
respect, right? Or helps you reflect on that. So what inspired you to write your story and Revitalize for the Soul? And was there a defining moment or event that sparked the idea?
I think it was timing actually, because I know that if I had met you a couple of years ago and you had asked me, I probably would have turned it down because I probably didn't have the confidence in myself to share my story. And when you had asked me, I really, I always recommend that people check in with their feelings. And not only does their conscious mind say something, but it's also your subconscious mind and your feelings really do speak to you. So when you asked me that and I checked in with myself, I'm feeling a resounding yes. So I said, let's do it. And I was really happy that you asked. And then I wasn't quite sure what story to offer because there was I was going to give you two or three or that sort of thing. And I had writer's block. People talk about it, and then when you're not on, and I mean, in a sense where you don't have a deadline, you're like, oh my gosh, I could totally knock that out. And then all of a sudden you have this deadline, and then I'm having writer's block and I don't know what to write about, and you're like, write about it all. And I'm like, okay. And so it went in a completely different direction than I anticipated. And I had asked a couple clients who have known me for a couple of years and said, I'm going to be writing this book, or not writing this book, but be a part with these wonderful 20 authors, including you. And I don't know what story to share. I have this and I have this and I have this. And she goes, well, why don't you talk about this story? And I'm like, oh, I totally forgot about this story. And it was really a pivotal story for me, as well as for my children. I mean, I found that I don't want to call it an odd duck, but it's kind of like I always felt the stork kind of brought me to the wrong home. Not that I don't love my family, I really do. I just beat to my own drum, and my family doesn't get me. They just don't. And I tried so hard to put the round peg into the square hole and be what they wanted me to be. And as you said in the beginning of this, writing really brings us back to who we are and connecting to ourselves, which is so true because that's what I also help people do. I had to do that for myself. It's really difficult. I was really upset with God for a while, actually, about why am I being put through this? But obviously, everyone has their own belief system. I believe that we sign up for certain lessons before we get down here. So I'm like, well, obviously, I signed up for this. I gotta release this, not be angry anymore about it, and just kind of go on my merry way.
Mhm.
So, kind of outing myself, which is what the chapter is kind of about, but in a way of being authentic to who I am. And that's what's, again, what writing is about. That person finding those layers about themselves and who they are in their authentic self and coming to their purpose and to their passion. And so when you told me about the title, I just really felt moved to do it as I said yes. And then, I shared that story, which it really kind of morphed on its own. That's not what I originally was going to talk about.
Mhm. Yeah, what an inspiration, right? And how you inspired even just your kids, right? Your surroundings, your inner circle that, you know, you didn't even know that you were. You touch people by doing this project, right? So how did you
Right.
develop the characters in the storyline? So I'm going to kind of dive into this a little bit more. You know, a lot of people think that you talk about characters and it's a fiction novel. This is not the way it is. In a nonfiction book, like you wrote your story in, there are characters in it. So how did you develop the characters or the storyline, and did any part of the chapter surprise you as you wrote it?
Yes. So what happened was is I went back to that memory, and it's kind of interesting because they always say that two people could be at the same event and have a different experience and
Hmm.
completely come away from it and say, that's not what I got out of it. And this is how I feel about it. So I came from the narrative of the writer, so to speak. And, um, how did I feel about it? And then I tried to come from a narrative of being a fly on the wall and that's where you really helped me with the outside experience, coming in and saying, what about this? What about that? And that was really helpful as well. And looking at each character and and how they felt about it. Because a lot of times when we're in experience, and the information is coming in and we're trying to process and pivot and it may be unexpected event that we didn't say, oh, when we go into it, we didn't expect it to happen that way. We had a whole different idea in our head. And let me tell you, I had a completely different idea in my head as I was going into this meeting that I talk about in this chapter. And I was shocked and surprised. And I had to make a decision right then and there. Am I going to pivot? So as I wrote it in first person. How did I feel about it? And then you really helped me come into the other, two people that were involved. How did they feel about it? What was their experience in it?
Yeah.
And that was really helpful.
Yeah, I always call that three-dimensional. It really takes a lot of experience or a wise eye to look at it from different perspectives. And this is my teaching moment to my daughter always. When she was younger, I'd always say, pretend you're looking out here at yourself in your life, looking, that perspective. That's helped her
Right.
tremendously in her career. She is moved up in many layers because she can do that. It's a practice. It's practicing that muscle because we can all practice. And she's of course an empath. I'm an empath. There's a different kind of, that's, studying those things is really important when you write. And also studying the
Yes.
Enneagram, which is another dimension upon a dimension, because Enneagram has layers within layers. And a lot of actors will study the Enneagram to understand the layers within the layers within the layers of a person. So you're just touching the tip of the iceberg, but you actually have touched in it tip of the iceberg that many authors don't get to. Many authors will just write from their eye, which is great. There's actually a wealth of experience by the reader reading that. And if you get to be really good at that, it is that you are really good at writing that way. However, if you ever have read a book in general, you will find like Harry Potter is a perfect example I bring that up because they have the dimensional in the characters. And that's what makes it so good. Each character is developed throughout those 6 books that she has, and they're being growing
Right.
as she's writing. So you did that, and I think it's going to be each reader out there. I really highly recommend that you get Revitalized for the Soul to read a Hillary story because it is amazing, and it gets to that dimension. You
Thank you.
get to see it from that dimension. So, is what challenges did you face? And how did you overcome them?
In the writing aspect,
Yeah. Yes, in the writing process.
um, well, actually, again, I went, I kind of freaked myself out as I was thinking about the storylines of what I was going to write and how vulnerable it was, because I'm a person who helps everyone come to their own vulnerability and really see their own stuff and then process their stuff. And I had to walk myself through that. And
Hmm.
as I was saying, okay, I can share this storyline, and where would that storyline go? I find everyone's different in life, right? Some people love change. And that's one of the things that I, as a coach, help people. Ironically, we teach what we need to learn. And being a military brat, moving 16 times before I was 18, I don't know how many times I moved, but God knows it was so many. I hate change, or I did, but I don't hate it anymore. But, so what happens is that a lot of times, there's more than 3 levels of consciousness, but I say there's 3 levels of consciousness. So we have one where we're just kind of out of our body and we're on autopilot. A lot of people, like the Matrix, we're on autopilot, so to speak. We don't remember how we got home. We remember we're at work and boom, we got home, and what route did I take? And it's probably the route that we took every single day. Then we get in our body and we feel our feelings and we're like, oh, this feels really good. This is wonderful. You're finally feeling, because a lot of people jump out of their body because they're bored, trauma's going on, whatever the situation is, they're out. No, thank you. I'm out of my body. And that's your spiritual body has basically kind of jumped out, and you're hovering above yourself to save yourself in any possible way. Then as you're feeling your feelings in your body, you're like, oh, this feels really good, but we only want to feel the good. We want to feel the bad. And so what happens when the bad comes in, then we say, you made me feel this way. No one makes you feel anyway. And that's wonderful things about stories, right? Because you get to go through and feel everyone else's feelings, especially as an empath. I'm an empath too, right? So when we're an empath, I tell people always feel that. Is this your feelings? Is this the other person's feelings that you're picking up? Because when you're super sensitive, you're going to pick up other people's emotions and feelings. But as we come into that place of just feeling only the good and we don't want to feel the bad, that inhibits us from growth. And so what happens is we call that victim consciousness. And when someone said that to me, boy, I lit up like a Christmas tree, as I say when our stuff lights us up and we get triggered. And I'm like, what do you mean victim consciousness? And we don't own our side of the street because we're pointing the finger at, well, if you do this and you change and you do that, because we're always looking outside of ourselves, but it's always within. And that's what's wonderful about these stories, because
Hmm.
it helps you go within and grow, right? And
Right.
really look as a person coming into more of your consciousness. And so what happens is the next level is mastery. And so you come into that emotional mastery where you're like, I want to feel my good feelings. I want to feel my bad feelings. I'm going to transmute that in my body. I'm going to, you want to make sure that you shift it through your body because your feelings do get stuck in our body. And what happens is then the feelings don't control you, you control the feelings. And when my spiritual teacher told me that 25 years ago, and obviously I did this big circle, like, darn it, she was right. Like we say that with our mom, we don't want them to be right. And, our parents, and they have that wisdom.
Hmm.
Um, you're not a robot. You still feel your passionate feelings, which is wonderful. So I literally went through that whole process and freaked myself out and had that writer's block as I'm looking at each line, because when we have a difficult time with change, what happens is people will say, I'm willing to do that change. There's 3 levels of change. I'm willing to do that change if I know exactly what's going to happen before I go there. When you're writing, you don't know where it's going to go. It's just like life. And
Right.
so what happens is people are like, okay, I'm willing to go the second level of change if you have a little bit of control, which is, feeling your feelings on the second level, so to speak. I'll feel only the good, but I'm not going to feel the bad. So I'm willing to step my toe and do this project if I know that there's positive and there's not going to be any negative. And because we don't know how to pivot sometimes in that negative, right? And we're afraid of loss.
Mhm.
But sometimes you have to have the loss to bring something in. You have to make space. People will say, my spiritual teacher would say, Hillary, you say you want new clothes. I said, yeah. She goes, clean out your closet. And I said, no, no, no. I'll clean out my closet when I get the new clothes. And she goes, you'll never get the new clothes. That's part of manifestation, right?
Mhm.
You have to make the space. So you have to go in there and clear out your closet to make the space for the new clothes because you only have so much space. And then we come into that place of, okay, going into the journey of, I had to go out there and say, I release the attachment to the outcome, however the story is going to be. And I'm just going to sit, as you've suggested. You're like, Hillary, just sit and write. It's just that, really. And I was overcomplicating it, obviously, getting in my head. And I just sat there and I said, okay, spirit, tell me what story to go with. And as I had talked to someone and she had said, what about that story? And I said, okay, I'll go with it. And I literally just sat down on paper and I just knocked it out. It
Mhm.
was this like, I let it flow. I didn't try to control it. I didn't look at where does it need to end. I didn't even know where it was going to end,
Right.
kind of thing. And I remember I said to you, I'll give you another chapter. I'll give you this. You're like, nope, we're good. Definitely
Yeah.
make the tweaks here and make the tweaks there. And I
Yeah.
did that, meaning
Yeah.
going down to the next level, so to speak, of looking at the other characters and how did they feel.
Right.
But like I was on fire. I was ready to go to the next chapter and the next
Yeah.
chapter.
Yeah. And it's amazing how many people have written all these chapters to now create more. And so we're also moving on to another Revitalize volume. We're going to kick that off right after the summit. And I'm going to bring in 20 new authors. And Hillary, you're very welcome, but everyone in the audience is very welcome to come on board to write another chapter. And we're going to build in the training like I did, and whatever people did. You could use the coaching if you did. Some didn't use the coaching, some used whatever my expertise they needed, they got. And it's going to be published in 2026. But I'd like to ask you, knowing that we're going to have some feedback, we're asking the audience now that the Kindle book is out and we're giving it for 99 cents only just for a short time, asking that you download and give a review and feedback on Amazon after you read it, read Hillary's story. I'm curious from you, Hillary, how you handle feedback and criticism about your work.
Well, I'm human like everyone else, so I do take it at heart for sure. And then I have to realize that everyone has their own perspective and everyone's coming from their own stories and their own journey, and it's going to land where it's going to land. And so I ask that whoever needs to hear it, just like you said, some people got your coaching and some people didn't, and people got whatever coaching they needed. I really appreciated your coaching. It was incredibly beneficial for me. And of course I was asking and praying and saying, okay, what am I supposed to do? I've got this writer's block. And then I come and talk to you about it and you're like, Hillary, you're overcomplicating it. Let's simplify it. No, no, really, Hillary, I know what I'm talking about. And of course you do. And so I follow the direction, right? And I asked for that coaching,
Yeah,
but I didn't directly say, I need coaching from Kim. I had no idea where to go. I was
right.
like, Spirit, lead me, tell me where I need to go. And so I have to realize that, we never know how someone's going to take something. We're like, how did you get that after what I just said here? And again, sometimes people get lit up and then they may say, okay, let me question why I'm getting lit up. And maybe that may be part of their journey and their story. So a lot, for a while, I had a podcast and I would go out there and do the podcast and some people said this about it and some people said that. Some people had really positive things too. And then I had to realize that I was helping awakening people. It's
Yeah.
not something I signed up for on the conscious level. I am, now I'm saying I am who I am unapologetically. Of course, I want to be respectful to people and to their beliefs and whatever they may be, right? No one wants to come in and be judged and say, you're wrong, you're this or that. But people who are on the journey, and that's who I meet. I meet people who are on the journey. They're going to question. They're going to say why, or because they're wanting to get to that next level or whatever their growth may be. And so I have to realize that. And
Yeah.
I'm not everyone's story or cup of tea, and that's okay too. I have to come in and come to that place of self and my own worthiness and be okay with me. And we don't always connect with everyone, and that's all right too. That's why you have a plethora of writers there who all share different experiences, because each person, you had me read that one chapter And interesting enough, I read the chapter that I probably wasn't supposed to read, but it was what I was guided to. Because you're like, you're supposed to do this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have homework and I can't miss the assignment. I mean, I have to make sure I get it on a deadline. And so I grabbed a chapter because I didn't know which one it was. And I had reached out to you, but I said, okay, I got to get this done. And it really moved me. It
Hmm.
was really, I mean, I really connected to the story and
Yeah.
to the writer. And I was like, wow, this guy's good.
Yeah.
And then ironically, probably wasn't the chapter I was supposed to review. So
Yeah.
I needed to hear it. I needed
Well,
to read it.
that's the whole thing, I mean, I think we're all on the same journey the same way we're just trying to, get reconnected with our souls, with our higher self, however people want to define it. So one final thing, is there a final message that you'd like to share with your readers or the audience here today?
To have kindness to themselves and to have permission to be who they are. It's difficult sometimes when we're kind of around a group of people and we're trying to grow, and it's okay that the other people aren't like us. That's what makes the world go round. And sometimes I feel like, we're little chicks in this little egg and we're coming out of this egg, so to speak, right? And I always felt like I was the ugly duckling, don't realize that ugly duckling turns into a swan, but I just wanted to be like everyone else. That's all I wanted. And I didn't celebrate my uniqueness, which is what I think everyone is coming to finally, in a place of, we all, I think, all wanted to be like everyone else. And now it's about who you are and celebrating who you are. And that's what makes you unique.
Yeah, celebrating who you are and connecting with everyone and opening up to and listening to everyone's truth and just accepting who they are. Well, thank you so much, Hillary, for being a part of this book collaboration. And everyone, please get the book and read Hillary's story. It's amazing. And thank you again, Hillary, for sharing a little bit more of you today.
Well, thank you for having me and being part of this project. I'm so excited. Thank you so much. And I know the next books are going to be awesome as well.